Have you ever noticed how the things we chase most desperately seem to slip through our fingers like water? The relationship we pursue too eagerly dissolves. The success we strain toward remains just beyond reach. The happiness we search for becomes more elusive with each step. What if this paradox is not an accident, but a fundamental principle of existence? What if the very act of needing, of desperately wanting, is what creates the barrier between you and everything you seek? There exists an ancient wisdom, echoed across traditions from east to west, that tells us something both startling and liberating. When you need nothing, you attract everything. When you release the grip of desire, you open yourself to receive abundance beyond imagination. This isn't positive thinking or manifestation tactics. It's deeper, a fundamental shift in how we relate to existence itself. It's not about pretending not to want. It's about discovering a way of being where wanting transforms into appreciating, where seeking transforms into finding, where emptiness becomes the womb of all possibilities. Take a moment now to pause. Feel the weight of your body where it rests. Notice your breath as it flows in and out without your conscious effort. In this simple awareness, you're already experiencing the beginning of this truth. Life supports you without your striving. The universe sustains you without your demands. Imagine a traveler walking through a vast desert. The sun beats down mercilessly, and thirst has become their entire world. Every thought, every action, every moment is consumed by the desperate need for water. They strain their eyes toward the horizon, searching for any sign of an oasis. In the distance, they spot what appears to be water: palm trees, greenery, the shimmer of a pool. With renewed energy, they rush forward. But as they approach, the vision dissolves into nothing but sand and heat waves, a mirage. Exhausted and devastated, they collapse to their knees. This is how we move through life when driven by need. We chase mirages, the job that will finally bring fulfillment, the relationship that will heal our loneliness, the achievement that will silence our doubts. We strain toward these visions, pouring our precious energy into pursuing what perpetually dissolves upon reaching. Consider how this plays out in daily life. A woman believes a promotion will finally bring her the respect and security she craves. She works relentlessly, sacrificing her health, relationships, and joy in the present. When she finally achieves the position, the satisfaction lasts briefly before new worries and pressures arise. The mirage of enough has simply moved further into the distance. A man believes finding the perfect partner will cure his sense of emptiness. He approaches each relationship with desperate intensity, needing the other person to complete him. This very neediness creates pressure that eventually suffocates genuine connection, and relationships that begin with promise ultimately dissolve, leaving him more convinced of his incompleteness. When you need something, truly need it in that grasping, anxious way, you are declaring to the universe, "I am incomplete without this. I cannot be well until I possess it." This stance creates an invisible barrier to receiving. It establishes a relationship of lack rather than abundance. Your attention fixates on what's missing rather than what's present. This narrowing of focus makes you blind to possibilities and opportunities already surrounding you. The energy of need is contractile. It tightens the body, constricts the breath, and closes the heart. In this contracted state, how can you possibly receive? Imagine trying to catch rainfall with a clenched fist. This contraction happens on multiple levels. Physically, the body responds to perceived lack with tension. Shoulders rise, breathing becomes shallow, digestion is compromised. Emotionally, we experience anxiety, impatience, and often resentment when our perceived needs aren't met. Mentally, our thoughts narrow to obsessive loops about what's missing. Spiritually, we disconnect from the flow of life, from trust in the natural unfolding of existence. The illusion of separation, that you are a discrete entity apart from the whole, lacking what you need, is the root of suffering. When you believe your completeness exists outside yourself, in some future acquisition or achievement, you create the very experience of incompleteness you're trying to overcome. What would happen if you questioned this fundamental assumption? What if nothing is actually missing? What if your sense of lack is itself the only thing standing between you and the experience of abundance? In many spiritual traditions, there is the teaching of emptiness. not as a barren void, but as infinite potential. The Taoists speak of the empty space inside a vessel being what makes it useful. The Buddhists talk of emptiness, sunyata, as the ground of all possibilities. Christian mystics describe how one must empty oneself to be filled with divine presence. This emptiness is not about lack. It's about spaciousness, openness, receptivity. Think of a cup that is already full. Nothing more can be added, but an empty cup can receive. The Japanese tea ceremony embodies this wisdom beautifully. The tea room is intentionally sparse, creating space for appreciation of subtle beauty. A single flower arrangement, the sound of water heating, the play of light on ceramic. This emptiness allows for full presence with what is, rather than distraction by excess. The ceremony isn't about filling up, but about creating the conditions for deep appreciation and awareness. When you cling to ideas about what you need, what you must have to be complete, you become like the full cup, closed to new possibilities, unable to receive the unexpected gifts that life continually offers. The practice of emptying yourself begins with recognizing attachments, not just to material possessions, but to ideas, identities, and expectations. What stories do you tell about who you are and what you need to be happy? What outcomes have you decided are essential for your well-being? Consider a simple example. You may be attached to the idea that you need at least 8 hours of sleep to function well. This belief seems reasonable, even scientifically supported, but examine what happens on nights when you get less sleep. Does your anticipation of feeling terrible the next day contribute to actually feeling worse? If you release this attachment and simply experienced each day as it comes, might you discover more resilience than you believe possible? Or consider attachment to a particular self-image. I am a successful person. This identity requires constant maintenance and defense. Any setback becomes not just a normal life challenge, but a threat to your very sense of self. What freedom might come from loosening this grip? Not abandoning all ambition, but holding your idea of success more lightly, allowing it to evolve and expand beyond your current conception. These attachments aren't wrong or bad. They're simply limitations. Each one is a way of saying, I can only receive in this particular form, this specific way. But the universe operates with infinitely more creativity and abundance than our limited minds can conceive. The poet Rilke captured this understanding when he wrote, "Be patient toward all that is unsolved in your heart and try to love the questions themselves. Do not now seek the answers which cannot be given you because you would not be able to live them." And the point is to live everything. Live the questions now. Perhaps you will then gradually, without noticing it, live along some distant day into the answer. Consider how often the best things in your life came in unexpected forms. The career opportunity that didn't match your plan, but opened doors you never imagined. The relationship that developed differently than you anticipated, but brought greater joy. The apparent setback that later revealed itself as a crucial turning point. The Zen tradition teaches this through the concept of beginner's mind, approaching life with openness and curiosity rather than preconceptions about what should happen. A famous Zen saying advises, in the beginner's mind there are many possibilities, in the expert's mind there are few. This wisdom of emptiness extends even to spiritual seeking itself. Many traditions warn against spiritual materialism, the tendency to turn even spirituality into another acquisition, another way to enhance the separate self. True emptiness includes emptying ourselves of our spiritual concepts, our ideas of awakening or enlightenment. The finger pointing to the moon is not the moon itself. The practice of emptiness extends to identity itself. What would it be like to loosen your grip on who you think you are, on your personal history, your roles, your self-image? These identifications, while necessary for functioning in the world, can become rigid containers that limit your experience of life's fullness. When you hold your identity lightly, you become available to experience aspects of yourself beyond your familiar self-concept. You might discover capacities for creativity, compassion, or courage that didn't fit your previous story about who you are. You might find that who you are is far more fluid, more expansive, more mysterious than any fixed identity could capture. The 13th century mystic Meister Eckhart expressed this when he said, "To be full of things is to be empty of God. To be empty of things is to be full of God." He wasn't suggesting literal renunciation of possessions, but pointing to an inner emptying, a release of our attachments, identifications, and the very sense of being a separate self needing completion. This inner emptying creates space for something greater to emerge, not as something added from outside, but as a recognition of what was already present beneath the noise of wanting. Like clouds parting to reveal the sun that was always shining, our release of attachments allows the natural radiance of being to shine through. The way of needing nothing to attract everything seems to contradict our conventional understanding of how to fulfill desires. We're taught that to get what we want, we must pursue it vigorously, overcome obstacles, and never give up. Yet the wisdom traditions suggest something entirely different, that our very pursuit creates the obstacles we then struggle to overcome. Consider the phenomenon of insomnia. The more desperately you try to make yourself fall asleep, the more elusive sleep becomes. It's only when you surrender the need to sleep, when you allow yourself to simply rest without demand, that sleep can naturally arise. The very effort to force sleep pushes it away. This same principle applies to countless areas of life. The musician who grips the instrument too tightly, trying to force perfection, loses the flow that allows true virtuosity. The writer who anxiously monitors every word blocks the creative current that would naturally produce eloquence. The lover who clutches at the relationship strangles the very connection they seek to preserve. The traveler in the desert rises again, moving forward with dwindling hope. Thirst now clouds every thought, every sensation. In desperation, they realize they can no longer continue this way. With the last of their strength, they find shade beneath a small outcropping of rock and surrender to the inevitable. "I can go no further," they whisper to the empty desert. And in that moment of surrender, something shifts. The frantic energy of seeking dissolves. The mind grows quiet. The senses, no longer narrowed to the single focus of finding water, begin to open again. They notice the quality of light on the sand, the intricate patterns formed by the wind. They feel the subtle difference between sunlight and shade on their skin. And in this expanded awareness, they hear it, a sound so subtle it was drowned out by their desperate thoughts. The soft trickle of water flowing beneath the sand at their feet. Not a vast oasis, but a small spring emerging from the rock, hidden in plain sight all along. This story illustrates what happens when we release the strained energy of needing. When we stop forcing life to give us what we think we must have, our awareness expands. We begin to notice what was always available but hidden by our narrow focus of desire. The path of paradox requires a fundamental trust. Not that you'll get exactly what you think you want, but that what comes will be exactly what you need for your evolution. It requires releasing the assumption that you know better than life itself what should happen. This surrender isn't passive resignation, but active alignment with the intelligence of the whole. Consider how nature operates. A seed doesn't strain to become a tree. It simply unfolds according to its intrinsic nature, responding to the conditions around it. The river doesn't force its way to the ocean. It follows the path of least resistance, flowing around obstacles rather than struggling against them. There is effort, yes, but it's a different quality of effort. Not the strain of swimming upstream, but the alert responsiveness of moving with the current. The Sufi poet Rumi captured this truth when he wrote, "When I run after what I think I want, My days are a furnace of distress and anxiety. But if I sit in my own place of patience, what I need flows to me without any pain. This paradoxical path doesn't mean abandoning dreams or goals. It means holding them lightly, with open hands rather than clenched fists. It means trusting that what comes to you, whether it matches your expectations or not, contains exactly the experiences your soul needs for its evolution. When driven by desperate need, you attach specific conditions to your happiness. I can only be happy when. This conditional stance toward joy keeps you perpetually in waiting, never arriving at the present moment where joy actually lives. This conditionality creates a life of perpetual postponement. I'll be happy when I get the promotion, when I lose the weight, when I find the partner, when I have the house. The goalposts continuously move, and the present moment, the only moment in which happiness can actually be experienced, is sacrificed on the altar of future fulfillment. The path of paradox invites you to reverse this equation. Instead of thinking, when I have X, I'll feel Y, it suggests when I access the feeling state of Y, X will naturally appear in my life, either in the form I imagined or in a form that serves even better. For example, rather than, when I find the perfect partner, I'll feel loved, the approach becomes, as I cultivate the experience of love within myself and in my existing relationships, I create the conditions for deeper love to enter my life. Rather than, when I achieve success, I'll feel worthy, it becomes, as I recognize and live from my inherent worthiness now, my actions naturally become more aligned and effective. This isn't magical thinking. It's recognizing that our internal state creates our perception of and response to external reality. When we operate from lack, we tend to create more experiences of lack. When we operate from wholeness, we naturally attract and create more wholeness in our external circumstances. The ancient Chinese wisdom of Wu Wei, often translated as non-doing or effortless action, speaks to this paradoxical path. It's not about doing nothing, but about allowing action to arise naturally from alignment rather than from striving. It's the difference between forcing a door open and finding the key that unlocks it. In martial arts like Aikido, one learns not to meet force with force, but to blend with the energy of an attack, redirecting it rather than opposing it directly. This same principle applies to life's challenges. Rather than bracing against difficulty or grasping after solutions, we can learn to move with the energy of what is, finding the path of flow, even within resistance. The art of receiving begins with a fundamental shift in how we relate to life, from taking to receiving. Taking is active, often aggressive. It comes from a belief in scarcity, a fear that there won't be enough. Taking is conditional. We only take what we think we want or need. Taking requires effort, strategy, and often struggle. Receiving, by contrast, is receptive and open. It comes from a trust in abundance, a recognition that life offers more than we could possibly imagine. Receiving is unconditional. We welcome whatever comes, knowing it contains a gift, even if disguised. Receiving requires not effort, but allowance, not strategy, but surrender. This surrender isn't resignation or defeat. It's a willing participation in the dance of existence. You stop fighting against what is. You stop demanding that life be different. You release the exhausting effort of trying to control outcomes. Picture a river flowing to the ocean. If you're swimming against the current, each movement requires tremendous energy and progress is minimal. This is like moving through life in resistance to what is. But if you turn and swim with the current, the same energy takes you much further. You don't give up on reaching your destination. You simply harness the power of the flow rather than fighting it. And in this surrender, something miraculous happens. The energy once spent on grasping, on protecting, on strategizing becomes available for creating, for loving, for fully experiencing the richness of being alive. Consider how much mental and emotional energy you expend daily on worry, resistance, and control. Imagine if all that energy were freed up. What might become possible? How might your experience of life transform? The German theologian Meister Eckhart spoke of this when he said, "The price of inaction is far greater than the cost of making a mistake." But here, inaction doesn't mean literal stillness. It means ceasing the internal resistance that prevents us from moving in harmony with life. There is a beautiful meditation practice from the Buddhist tradition called Tonglen that embodies this paradox. Instead of trying to push away discomfort and grasp after pleasure, our usual strategy, you breathe in the discomfort, the lack, the pain, and breathe out relief, abundance, and joy. You become a vessel through which transformation occurs, rather than a separate self struggling to acquire what you lack. To practice Tonglen, sit comfortably and bring to mind a specific experience of lack or difficulty, perhaps a feeling of inadequacy, a financial worry, or loneliness. As you inhale, mentally draw in this experience, acknowledging it fully. As you exhale, send out the opposite quality, confidence, abundance, connection. Continue for several breaths, expanding to include others who may be experiencing similar difficulties. This practice directly contradicts our instinctive approach. We want to push away what hurts and grab what feels good. But in Tonglen, you discover that by willingly embracing what you would normally avoid, you create space for its transformation. By giving away what you might normally hoard, you discover its inexhaustible source within you. The alchemy of surrender transforms your relationship with time. The anxious urgency of not enough time dissolves as you recognize that each moment contains exactly what it needs to contain. You stop rushing through experiences to get to some imagined better future and start appreciating the unique gift of each passing moment. This shift in time perception is profound. When we're constantly striving toward future fulfillment, time becomes an adversary. There's never enough of it, and it passes too quickly. But when we surrender to the present, time expands. Each moment takes on depth and richness. We discover that what we were seeking in some distant future, peace, joy, aliveness, is actually available now, in the simple act of being fully present. Your relationship with others deepens. When you no longer approach people from a place of need, needing their approval, their love, their validation, you become capable of seeing them as they truly are, not as projections of your desires. This clear seeing is the foundation of genuine love and connection. Consider how neediness distorts relationships. When you need someone to make you feel worthy, you'll ignore red flags, tolerate disrespect, or abandon your own values to keep them. When you need constant validation, you'll present a false version of yourself, one designed to elicit the responses you crave. But when you come to relationships from fullness rather than need, you can allow others their humanity. You can love them for who they are, not for what they can give you. The alchemy of surrender works similarly in creative endeavors. When you're fixated on producing something impressive or successful, the creative process becomes fraught with anxiety. You second-guess each choice, compare yourself to others, and often freeze in self-criticism. But when you surrender to the creative flow itself, when you create from joy rather than need, the work often flows more easily and results in something more authentic and powerful. Many artists, writers, and innovators describe breakthrough moments that came not from increased effort, but from temporary surrender. Taking a walk, sleeping on a problem, or simply deciding to trust the process rather than force an outcome. The solution or inspiration often appears precisely when they stop grasping for it. Even in health and healing, this alchemy operates. The mind-body connection research shows that stress and resistance can exacerbate illness, while acceptance and positive emotional states support healing. This doesn't mean denying medical reality or avoiding appropriate treatment. It means approaching health challenges without the added burden of resistance, allowing the body's natural healing capacity to function optimally. In the alchemy of surrender, what appears to be giving up control paradoxically gives you access to a deeper kind of power. Not power over life, but power with life. You become a conscious participant in creation rather than a separate entity fighting against the flow of existence. As you integrate these understandings and practices, a new way of living gradually emerges, one where the ordinary becomes sacred and the mundane reveals its hidden magnificence. You begin to recognize that true wealth isn't measured in possessions or status, but in attention quality. How present can you be? How deeply can you engage with your actual lived experience? How completely can you inhabit each moment? The Japanese concept of wabi-sabi embodies this appreciation for the sacred ordinary, finding beauty in imperfection, impermanence, and simplicity. A cracked teacup, weathered wood, the changing seasons. These aren't flaws to be fixed or losses to be mourned, but expressions of life's authentic nature, worthy of appreciation and even celebration. The art of receiving begins with presence. When you are fully present to this moment, not lost in regrets about the past or anxieties about the future, you discover it already contains everything you need. The simple miracle of being alive, of breathing, of witnessing the play of existence becomes enough. Presence isn't a state to achieve, but a natural condition to recognize. It's always available, though often overlooked. Right now, as you read these words, can you feel the weight of your body? Can you hear the sounds around you? Can you sense the space in which all experience occurs? This immediate awareness, prior to thought and interpretation, is presence. To strengthen your capacity for presence, create small rituals that invite full engagement of the senses. When drinking tea, for instance, feel the warmth of the cup in your hands. Inhale the aroma, notice the color and texture. Taste each sip fully. These micro moments of complete attention interrupt the mind's habitual time traveling and anchor you in the now. From this ground of presence, gratitude naturally arises, not as a technique or a should, but as a spontaneous recognition of the incredible gift of each moment. Even in difficulty, even in pain, there is something to be received, something to be grateful for. Research confirms that practicing gratitude correlates with increased well-being, improved relationships, and greater resilience during challenges. But the deepest gratitude isn't just listing what you're thankful for. It's a fundamental orientation toward life, receiving each moment as a gift rather than an entitlement or a burden. Gratitude isn't about denying challenges or pretending everything is perfect. It's about widening the lens to include all of experience, recognizing that even difficulties contain gifts of growth, resilience, compassion, or wisdom. When you approach life with gratitude, you stop sorting experiences into good and bad and begin to see how all experiences contribute to the tapestry of your becoming. With presence and gratitude established, trust begins to grow. Not a naive belief that everything will go as you wish, but a deeper trust in the inherent intelligence of life itself. You begin to sense that the universe is not an indifferent or hostile place, but a living matrix of consciousness that responds to your innermost state of being. This trust doesn't mean abandoning discernment or responsibility. It means recognizing that you're not alone in your creating. You're participating in a co-creative dance with life itself. Your part includes setting intentions, taking inspired action, and making choices aligned with your values. Life's part includes orchestrating circumstances, opening doors, and sometimes delivering necessary course corrections through apparent setbacks. In this sacred ordinary, synchronicities become commonplace. The right person, opportunity, or insight appears just when needed, not because you've manipulated reality through mental force, but because you've removed the barriers of separation that prevented you from noticing what was already available. These synchronicities aren't supernatural. They're expressions of the natural interweaving of all life. When you're aligned with the flow of existence rather than resisting it, you become more attuned to these connections. You notice patterns and possibilities that were always there, but were previously filtered out by your narrower focus. Your creative expression flourishes. When you're not creating from a place of lack, needing recognition, success, or external validation, your unique gifts can flow unimpeded. You create for the joy of creation itself, and paradoxically, this often leads to your work having a greater impact than when you were striving for impact. Many artists and innovators report that their best work emerges not from straining for brilliance, but from surrendering to the creative process itself. They describe becoming a channel or vessel through which something greater flows, rather than being the effortful originator of their creations. In the sacred ordinary, work becomes service rather than strain. Whether you're writing code, teaching children, building furniture, or growing food, the focus shifts from what you can get to what you can give. This doesn't mean sacrificing fair compensation or working beyond reasonable limits. It means finding the inherent value and meaning in the work itself, independent of external rewards. Relationships transform from transactions to genuine connections. When you're not approaching others with an agenda, needing them to fill your emptiness or validate your worth, you can offer the profound gift of true presence. You can listen without formulating your response, support without expectation of return, and love without conditions. Even mundane activities take on new significance. Washing dishes becomes an opportunity for mindfulness rather than a chore to rush through. Waiting in line becomes a chance to practice patience and observe the human condition. Commuting transforms from wasted time to a transition ritual between different aspects of your life. In the sacred ordinary, nothing is too small to matter, too common to appreciate, too simple to contain profound truth. As the Zen saying goes, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The activities don't change, but your relationship to them, and through them, to life itself, is transformed. The peace you seek is not waiting in some future achievement or acquisition. It's waiting in the space between your thoughts, in the silence beneath the noise of wanting. This isn't merely poetic language. It points to a direct experience available to you right now. If you pause and notice the awareness that's reading these words, you'll discover it has a quality of peace already present. This awareness, your fundamental nature, isn't agitated, isn't lacking, isn't seeking. It's the thoughts and emotions that arise within awareness that create the experience of unrest. When you recognize that you are this awareness, rather than just the changing content it contains, you access a peace that doesn't depend on external conditions. This doesn't mean you become emotionless or detached from life. Rather, emotions move through you without defining you, like weather patterns crossing the sky without altering the sky itself. The love you long for is not contingent on finding the perfect relationship or becoming a better version of yourself. It's the very essence of who you are, available whenever you stop searching and rest in your own presence. Think of how a mother naturally loves her child, not because the child has earned it or deserves it, but simply because love is her nature in relation to her child. What if that same quality of unconditional love is your nature in relation to all of life, including yourself? What if love isn't something to acquire, but something to recognize as the very substance of your being? When you experience connection with another person, that moment of genuine seeing and being seen, you're not creating something new, but recognizing what was always true, that separation is an illusion, that at the level of our essential nature, We are not discrete entities, but expressions of the same life. The abundance you desire is not locked away in some distant success. It's flowing all around and through you in every moment, waiting only for your recognition and reception. Consider the natural world. A single apple tree can produce thousands of apples over its lifetime, each containing multiple seeds, each seed having the potential to become another tree. A pair of birds can produce dozens of offspring over generations. The sun radiates enough energy in a single hour to meet human energy needs for an entire year. Creation is not stingy. It's wildly, extravagantly abundant. When we experience scarcity, it's usually not because life is inherently lacking, but because human systems and beliefs have created artificial limitations. We can participate in changing these systems, while also recognizing that abundance remains our natural state and birthright. For the next 24 hours, I invite you to experiment with this understanding. Move through your day as if you need nothing, not because you're suppressing your desires, but because you're curious about what happens when you release the energy of needing. This experiment isn't about denial or pretending. It's about shifting from a stance of grasping to one of receiving. You'll still take appropriate actions toward your goals. You'll still express preferences and make choices, but you'll do so from a different inner place, not from the contracted energy of need, but from the expansive energy of creative participation. Notice what opens up when you approach each moment not as something to get through on the way to something better, but as a complete gift in itself. Notice how your interactions change when you're not trying to extract something from them. Notice what becomes available when you're not fixated on what's missing. The journey of reclaiming your energy isn't just personal, it's revolutionary. Every individual who steps out of the energy harvesting systems weakens their hold on collective consciousness. Your liberation creates space for others to question, to awaken, to reclaim their own power. This doesn't mean imposing your understanding on others. It means living your truth so authentically that it becomes a silent invitation. When people encounter someone who isn't driven by the same anxious need that permeates modern society, they naturally become curious. Your presence asks a question: what if there's another way to live? Remember that this understanding is not new. It has been recognized and taught by wisdom traditions throughout history. It is your inheritance as a human being, this capacity to live from wholeness rather than lack, from abundance rather than scarcity, from being rather than needing. The Upanishads, ancient Sanskrit texts, declare, "You are that, tat tavam asi," recognizing that your essential nature is not separate from the fundamental ground of all being. Jesus taught that the kingdom of heaven is within you, pointing to the immediate availability of what we seek externally. Zen masters use direct pointing to help students recognize that what they're seeking is what's doing the seeking. These aren't abstract philosophies, but invitations to direct recognition. They're not saying, believe this doctrine, but rather look for yourself and see what's true. The invitation is always open. The door is always unlocked. The way home is always available, not in some distant future when all your desires have been fulfilled, but right here, right now, in the simple recognition that what you truly seek, you already are. Take a deep breath. Feel the space within you where nothing is lacking. And from that space, step forward into your life with open hands, an open mind, and an open heart, needing nothing and attracting everything that truly matters. The paradox reveals itself fully. When you discover that you need nothing to be complete, everything comes to you as a gift rather than a necessity. When you realize that what you've been seeking is what you already are, the seeking ends and the finding begins. As the poet Rumi wrote, "What you seek is seeking you." Perhaps it's been here all along, waiting only for you to stop running, to become still enough to recognize what never left. Your own inherent completeness, your own natural abundance, your own eternal presence.